Okay, so fast live reload, it's a tool which allows you to do, as the name suggests, live reloading, generally in the browser, but the main point is actually centered around executions, which is the main different factor than all the other live reloading tools. And I'm going to go on why I believe, as in this tool is necessary in the first place, and especially for me. So first, we're going to go like, what is it? If you've never used live reloading at all, okay, these next two slides are going to be like kind of an enlightenment. The thing is, if you ever develop code, what you generally want to do is to write the code in your editor, and whenever you save, whenever you do changes, for example, in your CSS or in your layout in the HTML, the browser which you have automatically to reload and change it. And my usual setup is I have two displays. In one of them, which I have my IDE or the editor or wherever, and the other display is kind of the output display where I can validate the stuff I'm working on actually changes I expect it to change. Okay? So for example, in this case, this is actually how I developed. This is the layout for my blog, and I was trying to make it mobile responsive. And the idea would be, okay, I would actually change the CSS code in here, and I wanted to see how live it changes on different resolutions as well. So I would have like a window full, like full screen, and another one on top of it smaller. The reason is, since I don't have to press refresh every time, this actually works faster when you develop your UIs in general. Especially for UIs, it's very powerful to do live reloading. And there are a bunch of tools who do that. I'm not claiming my tool to be the best or the only tool. It is best in one aspect, which we're going to go over. So, why this tool? Well, in general, when you do development, at least as how it is portrayed in dynamic languages, the development is something like this. You develop source files, this whatever. We have 3D presentations right now. There's a dent in the wall. So we have source files, which we change. And there is a server which actually will read the source files, for example, PHP files, whatever, JavaScript and stuff like that. And the client browser will just connect to the server, and just render your content. And traditionally, the live reloading looks something like this. You have a server standing in parallel with your development server, like the PHP, wherever Apache, Nginx, Express, wherever you use. You have a live reloading server which watches those source files, the folders in there, and whenever you change them, there is a script which is injected in the client browser, which is going to trigger the reloading. Okay? So far, pretty standard stuff. Now, in order to get the script in, there are a few ways to do that. One option is to actually have it in the browser. Okay? There are browser plugins which allow you to do this automatically. For example, I think Sublime has even one, which integrates directly the text editor, to do notification straight to the browser. So there isn't any other tool you would need to use. And the idea, again, the promise is, you can iterate faster. The moment you actually see what you're going to develop immediately, right? You change it, it changes in the presentation directly and across all the stack. Now, the problem, though, is that in reality, it's not that much. So it's a bit different. For example, we can have a compilation step, right? For example, if you edit TypeScript, you're not going to actually write your JavaScripts anymore. You're going to write your TypeScripts. There's going to be an intermediary step, which is the compilation of TypeScript. And the compiled resources are actually what your client interprets now via the browser. Okay? So far, again, all clear. And this is, again, an oversimplification. In reality, it's more like this. We have many things which actually go into play into getting one compiled resource, okay, in the end, which is my website. Because, for example, in here, I just give a simple example where I have Compass. I'm not going to write random CSS. I'm going to author my CSSs with Compass. I'm not going to write, let's say, JavaScript. I'm going to run with TypeScript. This can also be PHP or some other minification, Python compilation, wherever you have Java. For example, I run in a Java environment. And for me, for example, I don't actually, deployment is actually at a different level than just, I just copy the file there and it works. It's not going to be like that, never, ever in the Java world. Okay, so I have to, for example, copy the GSPs because I can do that. The Java classes actually have to reload them separately. There are solutions for Java as well, but it's a different beast altogether. And for example, I can also have a step like concatenation and mapping. Okay, for example, where I do just JavaScript, I bundle up together, right? And then I just write a huge file with source maps, so I can use my debugger, and work. And traditionally, if we remember this slide, this is how live reload servers, kind of all that I've saw so far, they solve this issue. They watch the source files, and whenever they change, they will notify the browser, okay? Now, the problem is, for this approach, this doesn't work anymore. Because whenever I change my source files, there has to be some step going on until I actually get to my final product, which my client can actually render. So far, I'm kind of in the middle. So what most people do is they actually are watching the compiled result. Okay, so they make the live reload server watch the compiled result. So whenever the compiled result changes, they trigger the reload in the browser. Okay? And there are, again, all the solutions out there, and there are very good solutions out there. And this is a problem for me, because most of the time, when I develop stuff, what it means is I need someone else to take care of these steps. Okay? Let's backtrack. I write source files. The watcher watches my compiled result. What happens with these steps? Who runs them? If I have an IDE, I can configure my IDE to actually do that. Okay? Depending on the IDE that you're using, some IDEs can actually do the full steps of compilation and stuff like that. You have to configure a bit, but sometimes it works. Sometimes, because I had some issues, honestly. And I've seen many people, what they do is they create scripts. For example, IDEA supports that you can actually create a bash script, which you would run. So you just press a button to run the thing, and it will start the Compass Watcher. And they'll start another bash script to start the TypeScript Watcher. And then eventually this one, for example, I don't know, they'll have another watcher or something. I don't know. But you can actually, in IDEA, you can have file watchers as well. So when the file changes, you can run a command. Okay, so they run two bash scripts and a file watcher. Okay, and whenever they want to restart the flow, because whatever reason, they change the product, they change the application server, wherever, they have to shut down those two scripts and the watcher for the files. Okay, they have to actually switch that. And most of the time, for me, actually, it's pretty trippy to do in the context of when I have like a small project. I don't want to start IDEA, for a tiny project. Every single time I start IDEA for this. This is, maybe people do that, but I'm not willing to do that. So this is where fast live reload is different, because fast live reload is actually focused a lot on the execution part. Okay? So what it does, for example, it can also watch the compiled resources. So it's similar, in some regard with the previous watchers. The thing is, for example, in the TypeScript and Compass, there is nothing else I can possibly watch. It makes no sense, for example, in watching the TypeScript files. Because again, the client is not going to render those. It's going to render actually the compiled result, the JavaScript. And you see in here, this is a proxying. This is also what most people do, actually. What they do is they create a proxy to inject the reloading script, so you don't need a browser plugin. Okay? So for example, if you want to support IE8, which I am, because my customers want IE8, we're going to give you IE8. You want to reload in IE8? Well, you need to somehow get the plugin in, okay? The actual reloading code, right? Whenever stuff changes there, this one should change as well. But how do I get it in my website without preferably touching my website? The most usual solution is there is a proxy, and the proxy, whenever sees the content, actually injects the scripts on the fly. Pretty cool, a bunch of people do that. Works pretty well. And then this one triggers the reloading, as I said before. But what, again, this one can do is basically do this. And this is where things start getting interesting. It can watch source files. And whenever source files change, and when I mean source files, I mean also you will basically watch this folder and this folder and these files and this folder. And whenever any of these changes, you run this command and this command and this command. Okay? This is what I call an execution set. And this is, you will see in a second why this is so much more powerful, in my opinion, because you don't need the build system anymore. Okay? You can just bundle up a bunch of scripts like this, and I think it's easier. And also it relies on the actual watchers. So for example, in here, there's a concept of having a parallel execute. What it actually means is whenever this guy starts up, it will start up the TypeScript watcher with some parameters. And whenever this guy is going to get killed, this one is going to get killed as well. How I ended up with this was, before I used to do something like this. I was using Tmux with Biobu. Anyone knows Biobu? Biobu? Yeah, one guy. Okay, in Biobo, you can have some sort of tabs in the terminal, which are actually handled by the terminal. And you can also open them programmatically. In reality, I will show that in a second how it works. What I would do is basically I would open 3 shells on the fly automatically. But the problem is, again, when I shut down my development system, I would have to go on every single tab and stop it. Whenever you start up a bunch of watchers, you have to go and stop them every time you want to stop them, kind of the obvious way, right? And the thing is, the live reloading thing in here, it's actually tied to those guys. So the moment I close these ones are started as child processes of these. And they will actually go down because this one is going to kill them. It's actually going to go and say, you know what, yeah, okay, you're done. You're getting out. And we're going to see now some demonstration on why this is more powerful. Because the thing is, in all the steps in here, most of the live reload that I've seen, it's focused on, I don't know why, on just live reloading of web pages. But again, my use case in general that I have, and this is just my use case, don't get me wrong, you can do it in Grunt, you can do it in Gulp, but it's difficult. This is my experience. It doesn't have to be yours. Maybe Gulp, it is the right solution. You do it in Gulp, all the watcher stuff, you do it much easier in Gulp. For me, it's not so. Because I have tasks like I want to render a dot file. I'm changing a dot file. And it happened, you know when? I wanted to build a graph of all the modules we were using in a Yahoo UI application. So we had all these modules in there, right? So I wrote a program which would output all the links, all the requires I would see between the links in a D graph in dot, right? And whenever I would change the sources, what I wanted was to re-see the graph, how it's changed. Because the thing is, we had a circular loop. I can see really well in a picture. I cannot really figure out from the code, right? This is the problem. So what I wanted was, whenever I change the dependencies, I want also this graph to being rebuilt. There is no tool which would allow me to do that, right? One second. I promise I take questions later. I promise. This is not like I'm not going to run away and back my PC. But the thing is like this, again, at least for me, this is my use case in general. I change some stuff in the source code. I want to run some stuff on the source code that I changed. And then eventually, I want maybe some reloading or not in the browser. Okay? All these parts in here, they basically become optional. So let's go to the demo. I have like a bunch of tabs, but they're actually not really tabs, like virtual screens. I can detach from them, I can reattach to them. What I usually do is I have like a 1 Biobo session per host, and then I can have like, multiple tabs with a different Biobo. So I can SSH to a different host, and I have tabs in there and stuff like that. So I can actually structure my work. Anyway, but another thing which I can do is I can actually run stuff. What I usually do is, as my flow is, I have in every single project that I do a live reload script, which just basically starts fast live reload with a bunch of parameters. So for example, in this place, I have a changed version from the blog I was telling you about, where I was changing the theme and blah, blah, blah. This is specifically for this demo. So what I'm doing is I'm starting Compass as a parallel execution, PE or EP or parallel execution. I actually support all the formats. Means the same thing. And then I'm going to serve the folder target to project snappy, which is basically it's going to be built in there. And whenever the stuff in sources change, okay, I'm going to execute grunt sync. All clear? And the thing is, because there is also no parameter, it's also going to refresh the browser. Hope it makes sense. The thing is, what I'm doing is I'm starting a watcher in parallel. Whenever stuff in there changes, it will run the command. I can also do it something like, I'm just going to execute it because it will tell what it does as well. And now it should write some stuff like doing this and doing that. Okay? And this is on purpose. There is also a dry run which will just tell you what it should do. And you can actually see, we'll notify the changes on port 9001, we'll serve the content from there, wherever, we'll run on startup and kill on shutdown this, and then whenever stuff in sources change, it will run sync. Okay? You can have multiple commands, you can have multiple folders. Both of them work. And you can have also multiple sets. So I can have, for example, if source and, I don't know, lib changes, run grunt sync. And if, I don't know, target changes, run whatever, other copy files, okay? Because again, I'm focused more on executions, not on the reloading. So what happens is, if we go to a browser now, I don't know, let's say Chrome. Meanwhile, let's also start editing in here. Whenever I will change code, obviously this stuff is going to be reloaded. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not going to be at brackets level. My reloading is not going to inject the node directly. If you've seen brackets live reloading, strongly recommend if you do static HTML, probably the best tool in the market. You know, it's really, really good. So, okay, and let's make it a bit smaller and even smaller. Okay, and now localhost 9000. Okay, and this is the stuff wherever has some stuff in it. Again, this is just a copy. It's actually a PHP template I was running on. I'm going to show you also the other one, the other script. But now if I go, for example, in the SCSS, in the variables, I change the links to, I don't know, pink, not pink, and not the sharp either. Okay, what's going to happen in here, Compass is going to start running the script automatically, because again, the Compass watcher was there. And then my stuff is going to pick up and then run the reload. And now everything changes. I'm using actually Compass, like, you know, the colors are actually derived from the base color, right? So I have one variable, but it's going to impact like 1,000 colors. Okay, I'm using like the complementary, and I don't know. You don't need to go in Photoshop, you know, you can just put them in there. So this is what other tools as well they do, okay? This doesn't have to be my solution, except the parallel execution and grunt sync running automatically. Again, this is not, they don't do that. You will have to find a way to do it manually. Okay, but other color stuff, which you can do, one second, is, for example, running the dot stuff. So for example, this is my dot file, which just has a graph. But what you can do is, we can open the result, which is basically this. Okay, let's quit this. And don't forget, now, I didn't start watching, 1 second. Whenever I change this, my picture changes. This is the picture which I'm working now with. Maybe I can make it like a bit more obvious, even if I can move it like this, and I change it to E. You've noticed like the small letter or W, wherever, the letter in here. So whenever I'm actually changing my source code, now I'm changing an image, okay? Or I can also run a unit test, for example. This is what I'll also do in another project. 1 second. So the thing is, and this is the reason why, in my opinion, I would use Fast Live Reload compared with any other tool that I have. It's because I can easily make a build script which runs kind of with what I want in that specific context. For example, I'm working on a collections library for TypeScript, right? So I write all these collections, and I have a test which is actually supposed to validate if my collection actually does what I think it's supposed to do. I'm using Mocha for that. So if I do that, cd in lang, I think, yep, is the same story. In here, what I do is I execute in parallel the TypeScript, running the compilation for this test, running output wherever, and then whenever the target test changes, it's going to execute the mocha okay? And this actually should be both folders, if I remember correctly. Okay? So whenever I see the output for this one change by the TypeScript itself, it's going to actually run the mocha test on the thing itself. What this looks like is basically like this. Okay, so it's going to run that. TypeScript does a compilation by default, so you will immediately see the actual run. Or we should see immediately-ish, because this computer is, I don't know. Okay, and now let's see what happens if we change stuff. And again, this is making sense. Right now, it's really weird when I present it to you. But think about it in 2 screens, because that's the setup I'm using. In here, I could do like, I don't know, Ctrl F2, but it will look really crowded. Okay, because that's how I'm using it, actually. I have 2 screens. One of them is for immediate feedback. I'm changing stuff, what happens? Okay, and I don't have to iterate a lot. So then, for example, if you go in here, let's go source, main, core, wherever there's it, I think, where is it there? Iterable. I'm just gonna, I don't know, find the, what am I testing? Linked hash map. Okay, so linked hash map. Oops. Wherever, let's see, removing this line, what it does. Probably not good things. Okay, and the thing is, if you're actually using the TypeScript, Watcher, it's so much faster than wherever you can think of. Like, don't use gulp. You would think you're faster, but you would be wrong, like really wrong, because they do a very cool thing with doing only partial abstract syntax tree rebuilding and stuff like that. Really, you cannot beat them in performance. Like, be my guest, but you cannot. And then, yeah, well, I immediately get feedback. Okay, this test fails. Okay, and this is the general use case that I would use my stuff for. So it's not just, it's very good in my opinion if you have something which you iterate really fast and you want to build a script for a short time where I will just test my stuff. Okay, it's probably not the best reloading tool out there. It actually does pretty good reloading, especially for CSS and stuff like that. I'm actually injecting only the CSS if you're changing it. So if you have like a model dialog thingy, it's not going to reload the full page. So you have to click again and again and again. But other tools do that as well. I'm not claiming, to be, but for this use case in particular, I haven't seen anything better. Okay, and basically, it can also do stuff like, serving just files, not always inject, which, for example, I saw other people doing. For example, I was always using Python -m simple HTTP server, but now if I don't do the client, if I don't start the 9001 thingy, it will just do basically serving some folder, So I can use it just as a simple server to serve some local files as a proxy to a different website. If I use -s, I can serve either local files, either remote websites, and if it's a remote website, it automatically proxies it. So I have to kind of only use one thing. It also does live reloading plus inject stuff. And the thing is, at least for me, it's simple. Also because I wrote it, also helps, But the thing is, most use cases that I use, they're actually covered in those 4 parameters, which is execute in parallel, or offline. So don't start any, client to notify me and wherever, and then serve whatever website. And these are like literally the 4 parameters that I'm using. And most of my scripts you've seen already. These are the scripts. And I can actually show you one last one. This is an actual script which was also copying stuff on a remote website. So this is also pushed on my GitHub, so the ChipLogic snappy thingy. And this is really the script I was using in my production. The thing is, I have a production server, as in, I don't know, pre-production, wherever, for my blog. I have a VPS for my blog, pre-production for my stuff on a virtual machine. And whenever I would edit my Compass sources, the Compass watch would pick them up. I would proxy this one, which is a PHP Joomla thingy, but running in my CentOS environment and blah, 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 with every single thing exactly with that environment. And then run grunt sync. And then only when the wherever remote stuff would do that, then it will refresh the stuff. Okay? And literally, basically, this is it. Conclusion?